Hello again, everyone. This is Bob Martin, the RC Sub Guy with the NautilusDryDocks.com, and as you can see, I've got kind of a big project to share with you.
Did you see the steam?
Yes.
Oh.
No, there's actually a speaker under the deck. That's a little camera.
Oh.
That just snaps on.
Get some sound.
Battle stations torpedo. Man, battle stations torpedo. Follow the General Lamar.
See the smoke?
Battle stations torpedo. Man, battle stations torpedo. Follow the General Lamar.
What you are looking at is a 1/32nd scale Vallejo class submarine from World War II, specifically SSN 316, the USS Barbell, lost in 1945. This particular boat has a really storied background that's actually really cool, makes it a lot more poignant as a piece of historical RC submarine history. This was built by a gentleman by the name of Bud Pietro, who was a machinist first class on this boat in World War II. Now, luckily, Bud was transferred off the boat before it was lost in 1945, and he built this boat as a tribute to it and the lost crew. Bud passed away in 2000, but before he did, I believe this boat was actually featured in the Chicago Veterans Day Parade, so it's a little bit of a famous boat. The entire model is based off of a kit that was previously available from a company called 32nd Parallel. Now, they went out of business back in the 1990s, so if this size of boat is something that turns your crank, unfortunately, you're probably going to be out of luck to get one on your own. The new owner of the boat is based out of Colorado. He reached out to me because he took possession of this boat a long time ago, and it ended up in storage. What he wanted was a complete refurbishment of the boat with more modern electronics and a better layout to make for a reliably operating RC submarine. And that is where we stepped in almost 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Was shipped out to us in a massive crate. We were busy at the time. We put it aside. Finally ended up getting to it. We gutted the entire thing. Now, originally, the boat was actually what's called a dry hull submarine, which means the entire center section of the boat was sectioned off and everything was inside, housed underneath clear plastic covers with probably 50 or 60 nuts that needed to be removed every time you wanted access to the boat. We changed things up, and we're going to get to the internal arrangements of this submarine coming up here very shortly. Let's take a closer look at the boat before we get into the technical parts of the build. So cosmetically, not a lot changed. We were more interested in the functional aspects of the boat. That having been said, when we got it, it was basically just two-tone gray. We did take the time to weather it up, make it a lot more realistic looking. Moving front to back here, all of this was in place. This really cool flag was already done. The original builder had this set up for gas-powered torpedoes. These are actually spring-loaded shutters for the torpedoes. Now, the new owner, I think, made a good choice. We were limited in the number of channels that we had, and so he elected not to go with functional RC torpedoes yet on this build. As it stands right now, we are using a 12-channel receiver, and every single one of those channels is used, and some of them are doubled or even tripled up for features, as you'll see here shortly. Moving forward, you can see these dive planes are in the stowed position. These are fully functional. They will extend and retract. The previous owner had a really cool failsafe system put in place. We elected not to go with it because this is a 2.4 gigahertz boat. It's going to be operating mainly on or near the surface, but this was actually a flotation buoy that would release in the case of loss and float to the surface with a fishing line underneath it. You'd be able to tell where the boat was. In the front here, you can see this operational hatch and something kind of funky underneath there. That's a magnetic clip for a waterproof camera that we've got. So you can actually mount it facing forward or back and collect some really cool footage as the boat is operating. Right behind that, we've got this little functional torpedo loading hatch. Just a really neat scale detail. When we got it, all of these upper deck guns were rigged up for swiveling, and they are set that way now. But all of the guns, when we received it, were made from white metal. They weighed almost 3 pounds by themselves. You can see there's a lot of them. We pulled those out, swapped them out for high definition, high strength 3D printed nylon guns. We got these off of Shapeways. If that's something you're interested in, they have them there available for purchase. We also installed fully functional LED lighting. So we've got nav lights, forward floodlight, a rear searchlight. So it really adds a lot of visibility and visual interest to the boat when it's operating. Up here you can see the mast housing for the 2.4 gigahertz antenna. And then this is actually a functional periscope. This extends and retracts in conjunction with the surfaced state of the boat. And we'll get into that here in a minute. Right behind that, in this mast, there's a little hole that you can see in the back, and that's the intake for the main low pressure blower for the ballast system. This radar actually spins, comes on with power, so it'll spin around, again, just giving a lot more realism to the boat. Moving into the back, we've got more kind of functional hatches that are in place here. On the deck, you can see a little intake. Now, this is actually for functional smoke generator that exits via the exhaust that you can see right there. That is a really cool system. It's something I'm really proud of. I'm going to show you the secret to that coming up here shortly. Then coming up on the back, we've got this secret hold down that's in the place of a bollard. That just screws down, and that's what holds the entire upper fiberglass deck down. And that's pretty well it. All of those features, with the exception of this, which aficionados of this boat will recognize as not being standard. This is a scratch-built stern thruster. Obviously, with this boat being nearly 10 feet in length, we needed a way to turn it around, make it more maneuverable in the case you get backed into a corner or operating in a smaller body of water. Now, what we actually found, though, during the Maiden Voyage, this just last Saturday, this boat will actually turn quite well. You can see it's got a large rudder and it's mounted directly behind the propellers. So actually the turning performance is surprisingly good for a boat of this size. Now that we've taken a look at the boat sort of as a whole, let's go back in the shop. I'm going to show you the control boxes that make all of these functions work. So as you can imagine, big boats need big stands, and we built one for this boat. Done properly, one person can actually manage this submarine. Surprisingly, the entire boat, fully laid down with the battery and all of the control boxes, only weighs about 60 pounds altogether, which is incredibly light for a boat, again, that's nearly 10 feet in length. So one person can manhandle it onto this stand, much, much better for two. But what we did is we built this stand out of a section of an aluminum step ladder, did some PVC frames in here, and we put some wheels on the back. So one person can just pick up the front, drag it behind them from their vehicle to the pond and back again. Makes it really convenient. The other thing that we did, we added these little arms, and these are really convenient for making all of the connections between the upper hull and the lower hull, namely pneumatic lines for the periscope system, power for the lights and radar, and the intakes for the various air systems of the boat. And basically these can just swing in and out. You can set the upper hull on here so it's right next to the main hull, make up all of your connections and put it in. You can also swivel these in so that you can set it just over the boat and have better access to the wires if they're shorter throws. And again, we'll show that to you here in a little bit. Now that we've taken a look at the stand and all those boring parts, let's see what makes the boat tick. All right, you probably want to know how this thing is powered, and just like the time machine from Back to the Future, it's electric. This is a sealed lead acid battery, 12 volts, 10 amp hours. It's significant. I believe it weighs about 9 pounds all on its own. When we had the boat out to the pond, we ran for about half hour straight, and we only lost about half a volt in the battery charge. So this is good for many hours of fun at the pond before you would need to recharge it. Moving forward in the boat, you've got the main engine room. These compartments are all plastic waterproof containers, and they're actually individually rated for up to 80 feet of depth safely. So these are modified for use, obviously, as control boxes for this large RC submarine. This motor compartment has a few things of note. Obviously, we've got output shafts for the main drive shafts. And then we've got power studs on the top for the motor and the air pump. So these are the main drive motors and the air pump for the low pressure blower system, which forms half of the ballast system. And we've got the intake and output for said ballast system. Let's take a look inside here. So you can see getting access is very, very easy. Just pop the latches, flip it open, and you've got full access to everything. These are big, high quality Pitman electric motors, extremely torquey, and they work exceptionally well to power this boat. They're a really good RPM match for the propellers on the boat. This is a large air pump, and this takes air from the surface, blows it into the ballast tank, just like the real submarines do. That's pretty well it. That's all that's in this compartment. It gets mounted in the stern of the boat. Moving forward, the command and control section. So lots of inputs and outputs here. We've got our main power input, which provides obviously power for the system. There's a speaker output for the sound system, the pump output, and then over here we've got the motor output, motor power output, and then all of the servo connections for the various functions of the boat. And these are waterproof connections, all made up. 2.4 gigahertz antenna. And then we've got a little test hose here. So if you pop that off and put a longer hose on, you can actually pressure up this compartment underwater and look for bubbles to see if you've got a leak. Let's take a look inside at the spaghetti. So looking at the lid here, this is the sound system, and this has user selectable outputs. It's got sonar pings, guns shooting, call to action stations, all sorts of different sounds that you can play through this unit, and that is selectable from the transmitter. We got a lot of wire in here, and things are actually much tidier than it may appear. Got the electronic speed controller for the stern thruster, speed controller for the main motors. We've got a power distribution block in here. And then basically servo reversers, electronic pitch controllers, relays for operating bow planes, and all sorts of things like that. And then we've got this R12DS Radio Link 12-channel receiver. And that is our control box. We'll make sure I'm not pinching any wires here, which is about the only danger of using these boxes. Now in the back, we've got this little box here, and this one is the smoke system for the diesel engine simulator in the back. We got power out to the atomizers, which we'll show you, and the main switch that turns the system on and off depending if the boat is surfaced or submerged. So this is a really unique system. Typically with a smoke system, you've got a little heater that will actually burn glycerin to create actual smoke that would come out of the stack in a surface boat, for example. That becomes problematic for an RC submarine because you would need to close off all of the intakes and everything before the boat submerges. So that would be an increase in complication that we did not want to have. I got the idea to use something a little bit different, and those are the atomizers that you'll see in aquariums and that sort of thing. So they're an ultrasonic water atomizer. Those atomizers, and we'll show that in the boat once we open it up, take water in, atomize the water into a mist, and then an air pump right here powers up and blows it from the atomizer chamber out the exhaust tubes in the hull. So what we're looking at here right now is the main system. The power for those atomizers is actually 24 volts. So this is a 6S LiPo battery pack, which is operating at 22.2 volts. And then it's getting fed off of this air pump that takes that power and scales it down to 12 volts, which is what that operates at. But really, that's all there is to it. Power, pump, and a voltage regulator. The secret sauce comes in the actual atomizers, which we'll show you here in a minute. This is the intake for the pump, and the other right here is the output. Radio system that we're using is the AT9S Pro by RadioLink, which is our radio of choice for our 2.4 gigahertz boats. Taking a look at the various controls here, on the right stick have our rudder control and our dive planes. On the left, we've got our stern thruster controls, right and left, which is very intuitive, and our main throttle for the propellers. Switch D up here is what extends and retracts the bow planes. Now, really what this switch is a surfaced or submerged state switch. Many things happen when you switch it. So when the bow planes are extended, the periscope raises, the bow planes unlock, and the smoke system turns off. When they are in the retracted position, the surfaced position, the periscopes retract, the dive planes get locked out so that they can't jam in the retract position, and the smoke system turns on. So this switch is the surfaced or submerged state switch, not necessarily the bow plane retract switch. Up here we've got control for the sound system. By twisting that knob to various positions, you can select up to 4 different sounds. And then on the other side, on this proportional switch, you've got the control for the swiveling deck guns. And 3 of those guns are all ganged together, and they'll swivel left or right with that switch. Switch F on the top here is F for Failsafe. If that gets flipped, the emergency gas blow system engages, uses liquid air to purge the ballast tank of all the water, and the model comes shooting back up to the surface. On the back, we've got control for the stern planes. Those are on an automatic pitch controller, so really you don't actually use this very often, but you can, if you want, use it to adjust the trim of the boat. And then on the other side is the control for the ballast system. Down to dive, up to surface. Simple as that. A lot of the other functions that we talked about, the lights and the spinning radar and those kinds of things, are all automatically on with power, or they're tied to other functions of the boat. All right, it's time to show you the magic of how everything goes in and how everything all works together. Well, let's get into the boat. Super easy. We're going to unscrew the bollard in the back that I showed you a little earlier, and there's a handy dandy little hole in the ladder. Just drop that in and you'll never lose it. Pull off our stand here. Pick up the upper hull from the back. Slip it back, and now the upper hull just rests right here, up, out of the way. Let's, the other thing that you can do, which is actually kind of handy when you're not using it, the radio just slips right over this stud, out of the way, and you're not going to step on it or drop it, which is really cool. We'll take our main drive battery, and we're going to drop it into the cradle here. Keep our cables all out of the way. This just slips straight down and forward. Now that's in place. We got our power lead, which we're not going to hook up yet because that's how you turn everything on. You simply plug it in. Now we're going to start from the back. We got our control box for the smoke system. Now, one thing I want you to note on this and all of these other control boxes is the little plate on the bottom with these magnets in them. So the way this works, in the bottom, there's a panel with recesses in there, and this drops down and basically snaps into place magnetically. So this is locked down. It's actually a very solid connection. Keep that air hose out. And we've got our wires in here. So this is the switch power. And the smoke is going to get connected to that as well. What we're going to want to do, actually, now that I'm on this side, I'm going to swivel these in, pull the boat a little closer. So what we got going on, these are the atomizer chambers, and these are the actual atomizers themselves. Now they're friction fit into the bottom, so you can actually adjust the height so that they're the proper distance under the water for the maximum amount of vapor. These just happen to be at the right spot, perfectly flush with the bottom. You can see all the plumbing for the exhaust outlets there. And this is the pump output, so that blows air into this chamber, pressures it up, and forces the smoke out those little vents. It's actually really cool, and it works surprisingly well. The thing that's great about this, there's no charging up with oil, there's no heating elements, there's nothing like that. Provided you've got power and you're in the water, everything will work. This is the output that simply plugs into the little port on the front of the box. And then this plugs into the intake right here. So the air gets drawn in there through the pump and then blown into the atomizer. Maybe before we go further, what we can do is take a look at the general layout of the interior of the boat before we put the compartments in. So starting at the back here, we got our linkages for our rudders and dive planes, but this is the scratch-built stern thruster that we've got going on here. You can see a beveled gears, and there's twin props on either side there, and that's all powered by this brushless motor. Now, because it's brushless, it actually doesn't mind being in the wet at all. After every run, spray it with a little bit of water displacing formula, and that'll ensure that there's no corrosion or anything like that that winds up in the motor. We've got these waterproof high strength servos from Hi-Tech, and that's our stern plane and rudder servos. Got our shafts for our motors here that'll hook up to our main engine compartment. And we've got ballast tank number 2, our power compartment here. This is the fill port for the liquid gas backup system. So you charge this up using a special adapter for computer dusters, of all things. That liquid air is sufficient to probably purge these tanks at least 3 or 4 times, which is really good. Ballast tank number 1. Now these are plumbed together. You can see that, so they act as one ballast tank even though there are 2. Each one has its own individual vent. Moving forward, we've got the charging port for the pneumatic periscope system. So this charges up a large air tank that's up in the front underneath all this foam, and then it runs through this pneumatic valve, and then these outputs connect to the periscope system. And I guess since we're here anyway, we might as well grab those. They use a pair of quick connects that snap together like this, push and twist. And every time these connections are broken, you need to recharge the periscope system. We'll show that to you here in a moment. Moving up to the front, we've got the speaker for the sound system. It's a waterproof speaker, and it works really well because it's underneath the deck here, which has all of these openings and holes in it, so the sound is really transmits really well through the boat. In the front here, we've got our bow retract and bow plane servos. You can see that this is depressing a switch right now. So that's a safety switch that turns on and off the smoke, and it also locks out the bow plane servo as well when the planes are retracted. So now you've got an overview of everything in the boat. Let's continue by installing the motor compartment. And again, just like the other one, we've got magnetic hold downs. So we'll just drop this down. Before we seat it, we're going to put our dog bone connectors in the back here. So we just kind of nestle it in the dog bone adapter and then drop it down. That's locked into place now. All of these outputs are labeled. So this, for example, is the motor positive connection. Here's the motor connections. Now you will notice a little bit of green corrosion on there. During testing, we just neglected to put a little grease on the positive terminals. This is perfectly fine, a little bit of green corrosion, but you want to clean that off and put a little grease on there to make sure that that corrosion doesn't affect the power transmission. Now we got our output for our pump that goes to our ballast system. And then up here is the intake hose for the ballast system, and that just slips over this nipple here. Now our ballast system is completely connected. Moving forward, and this, unfortunately, there's no way around it, is a little bit of a pain. There's a lot of connections that need to get made up to put this in, but fortunately, after they're all made, you can open and close this box when it's in the boat. So you really don't need to make and disconnect these very often, but occasionally when you do, these are all marked with numbers, and the corresponding servos are all marked as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and start connecting all of these. Connect our main power to the back. And now we're going to go through, starting on the bottom row, working our way up, making all these connections to fast forward. So you in, twist, and drop. Now that is seated, locked in place. We've got our speaker output. Plugs into the speaker connection. And our light connection goes to the upper hull. Goes like that. Number 2 is the last connection on the box. And that gets torqued down. And we just need to find our pump connection. Now we've got our 2.4 gigahertz antenna, and that is going to get fed up on the inside of the hull, right here. And while I'm doing that, you can take a look at the linkages for the guns. It's a waterproof servo, so it runs to these cams that are all connected together, and that's what rotates the guns together when you adjust the switch. So before we get everything powered up, we need to charge it up. Now this is that liquid duster I was telling you about before, along with the adapter that we sell here at the dry docks. In order to charge up the gas ballast backup, you simply push that on, squeeze the trigger, and that's pushing liquid air into that tank. Just pop off the tip. Now that's all charged up, ready to go. The last thing that needs charging is the periscope system. We'll screw on our adapter here. And we pump and we pump and we pump and we pump until we get about 100 pounds of pressure in the periscope system. Personally, while it is another function that's available on the boat, and it was kind of here, so we decided to make it work, really all that happens is this moves up and down about 4 inches. Is it worth charging up when you bring to the pond? I don't know. It depends how much you like people oohing and awing when you're on the shore demonstrating everything. But I'm just going to charge this to about 60 pounds, which is where we're at right there on this handy pressure gauge. And unscrew our adapter. In theory, we're charged up and ready to go. Radio's on. Grab our power, connect it together. All right, I intentionally kept these extended because I don't want my air for the diesel exhaust to be running right now. Still gonna show it to you, but we're gonna go through one at a time. So with power, what you should see, the LED lights all come on so you can see the navigation lights, the floodlights, the spotlights, the radar is spinning. Basically what this is, by the way, underneath, and I don't know that you'll be able to see it because it's kind of buried in there pretty deep. But there is a little, right here, a little container. And that's got a slow geared motor in it. The entire chamber in there is filled with mineral oil. So that motor is actually spinning in liquid. And in theory, provided it's sealed up fairly well, there's no way for water to enter that chamber because the fluid inside, the mineral oil, is keeping it out. So let's start going through the functions one at a time. We've got our forward dive planes, and we can show you the retracts. Now what should happen when the retracts go? The bow planes should fold up, the periscope should retract, and the pump for the exhaust should turn on. So let's see if it works. And it does. The periscope retracted and you can hear the pump running, the light came on. Now if I retract the bow or extend the bow planes, if you look in the back here, what will happen is the power will go out to this unit. All right, moving forward in the functions. Since we're there, let's test out the sound. Oh, the guns. There we go. I grabbed the wrong dial, but there's the guns, swiveling left and right, all completely controllable from the transmitter. Now let's try the sound out.
Battle stations torpedo. Man battle stations torpedo. Sound the general alarm.
So those are the 4 different sounds that you can have on the submarine. Since we're here, let's take a look at the ballast system. So I'm going to open up the vents. I'm going to dive the boat. That valve opens up. All the air escapes from the ballast tanks, both ballast tanks. And I can close them. And now I can surface the boat. I will engage the low pressure air pump. That's blowing air into both tanks at the same time, and you can hear it actually being sucked from this intake. So in the vast majority of the time, you're going to be operating at periscope depth. You can force the boat to the surface and then you can intake air in there. Now, if for whatever reason you were to happen to dive the boat too deep for this intake to get any air, you can use the gas backup system. And that was on channel F, like I told you before. I'm going to hit that briefly right now, and you'll see it erupt into the tanks. And like I said, that should have enough to purge both tanks fully at least 3 or 4 times. Keep going to the back here. We got obviously our standard rudder, our stern plane override, and then of course the thruster and our throttle. That's the last of the functions, unless I am forgetting something. The last thing you want to do before you head out to the pond is check the Failsafe system. So this does have an integrated Failsafe system, and it lives in the actual receiver. It's programmed through the transmitter, and you can basically determine exactly what happens in the case of a loss of signal event. Most of the time, that is going to occur because you dive the boat too deeply and the antenna gets submerged, doesn't receive signal anymore, and it goes into fail-safe mode. The way I have it set up, a few things will end up happening. The forward dive planes will go into full rise. The stern planes will go into full rise. The throttle will cut out. The ballast tank will kick in, and the emergency blow will engage. So lots of things happen in an effort to ensure this boat comes back up as quickly as possible. We are going to fake a loss of signal event by cutting the signal from the transmitter simply by turning it off. What we should see, full rise on the forward planes, full surface on the stern planes, the ballast system will kick in, and the gas backup system will engage. This thing's going to come up regardless. Let's see what happens. Full rise, full surface, the pump is on, you can hear it, and I can hear the gas blowing out of the system. Turn it on, the boat's back up at the surface. A few seconds later, you got full control of the boat once again. Last thing I want to talk about is this camera system. Now this is fully self-contained, high definition, waterproof camera. It mounts to the front underneath this hatch here. Now you can mount this in the position that we did during the Maiden Voyage, looking back over the tower, which is a pretty cool field of view, or you can switch around, have it going out the front if you want to see where the boat was going. It's a magnetic hold down. You simply drop it into place. The pin goes into an orientation hole, and that's it. It's now down, snapped into place. You hit go, record your footage, bring it back to shore, and you've got beautiful, glorious, high definition underwater and surfaced video of your patrol at the lake. Now, before you guys start dropping comments here, no, you cannot have underwater wireless video. These transmit at too high a frequency to work. I prefer recording in HD under the water, have it back to shore, and you've got all of the high definition glory to look at. In most cases, water clarity is nowhere near being useful to pilot or navigate your boat anyway. You're not losing out on anything. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the overview of this 32nd scale USS Barbell. If you like what you see, please do like and subscribe. It helps us out at the dry docks a lot. If you have any questions or comments, drop them below or send me an email for a faster response, bob@nautilusdrydocks.com. We would love to hear from you. With that, we are going to let you go. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.